Welcome on to the show, our buddy Logan Paulsen, my co-host on Take Command. Logan, we're out here in Vegas, man. How are you doing?
Yeah, I didn't realize you guys were so big time. You're out here in Vegas just living your best lives. That's pretty fancy by you guys.
World travelers. We do it up.
When we have a whole table just for us.
If somebody's doing a radio row, they want us here. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, and they should, rightfully so. Absolutely. A man of your pedigree and talent. Absolutely.
They are treating us like big time. They picked us up at the airport.
It was great.
A guy had a little sign with our name on it.
Now, the sign said The Junkies, but still, we said we're from the same station.
We said we know those guys.
I know Jason Bishop. Let me in.
I have been there and
know?
done that. We know that show. All right, Logan, let's start with the joint practice. I know you were not there. You were traveling to the Cape, but you have seen all the reports. You know how it went. You've been a part of some joint practices as well. How worried should we be that it went terribly?
Well, I mean, obviously, there are some things that came to the forefront there that I think a lot of people are aware of. Obviously, the offensive line, the depth issues there. But I come back to this point. Matt Coleman is a sixth-round pick. He's probably not going to be a starting center week one. Good Jones has not played right guard this entire training camp at all. So, you got two guys who have not worked together really, or playing different positions against a defense in Jesse Minter that's going to be tough for any rookie center to kind of target and identify runs. So, again, is this something to be aware of? Absolutely 100%. Is it something to be petrified in fear over? I don't think so. Again, because Sam Cos is going to play. Allegretti, if he's healthy, is going to play. I think you can get through a game with Good Jones if Cosme is there. So I think that's kind of the way I would look at this and say to myself, yes, it wasn't good by all accounts, not really exciting. But again, I think that those two positions in particular could really have negatively affected the day.
So here's a couple follow-ups then on that, Logan. So, yes, everything you said I think checks out in terms of who was there, who wasn't, and no record, no game was won and lost, obviously here at the end of August. But what it did feel like more emphasis is being placed on that, either through comment or by evidence of what else is happening in the preseason, right? If your starters on offense play 3 plays, 2 are negative, both blown up, and then you get a give-up run on 3rd and 20, and then so you're obviously got this date circled as maybe being more important than that dress rehearsal against Detroit, and it doesn't go well, you can understand maybe a reaction. I'm with you. Nobody should panic. Nobody should pull the fire alarm here, but you can understand maybe fans feeling some type of way.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying they shouldn't feel some type of way, and I'm not saying you shouldn't feel some type of way. I guess what I am saying, though, is they obviously went into this event treating it a little bit differently. Because if this was week one, and we have to play a game, who's playing right guard for me? Wiley's playing right guard for me, or Trent Scott, and they were not playing those positions, right? So, again, they were obviously using this as an opportunity to evaluate Coleman, evaluate Good Jones in new roles, and kind of say, hey, where is our actual interior depth if we had to play a game tomorrow? And so, yes, that is the point of practice. That is the point of a joint practice, to kind of help you identify where the roster is at versus other really good defense there in Detroit. So, yes, I understand. Be concerned. Be upset if you want to. That's totally fine in my opinion. But I do think there is some context there that kind of would say, hey, maybe this isn't that big of a deal. If we had to play a game tomorrow, the offensive line, even with Sam Cosme out, would look drastically different.
Logan, what did you make of signing DJ Humphries? Because if you would have told me they went and got a veteran, former Pro Bowl offensive lineman, I would have said, awesome. Which center did they sign? And then it ended up being a tackle where Coleman's played pretty well, and it feels like it's going to be for depth. What'd you make of that?
Yeah, no, I think it's something that they kind of that's been kind of their modus operandi, at least with Adam, the last couple of years. Obviously, they signed Noah Fant last year, and I think they have a lot of confidence in Wiley, but I think they feel, at least from what I understand, much more comfortable with him at right tackle and right guard. And so if that's how you feel and you need some depth pieces there at left tackle, again, Coleman would have been that depth piece if Laramie Tunsil was healthy, then obviously you need to go out and make a move and find somebody you feel comfortable playing games with. So, again, Humphrey, I think was very, very good a couple of years ago. Obviously, he hasn't played a lot of football recently, but athletic, experienced, and someone that you could get through a game with if you have to. So I think it's a smart signing if you do not have the confidence that someone on the roster can play left tackle. And by all accounts, that's kind of how they feel about it.
3 starts for him over the last 2 seasons, to your point. Going back to what you said about Wiley, because I've heard some of that too, actually, internally, that they feel really good about him on the right side, maybe not as good on the left side. How different is that? I feel like at least the average fan would anticipate that at the NFL level, if you could play on the right side, you can play on the left. Flipping from one side to the other, tight ends do it every single snap. What's so different?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of if we had a long time, we could talk about it in great detail, probably a couple hours. But I will say, like, I've worked with a couple offensive linemen who actually have different bone structure in their left hip and their right hip because they've worked one pass set for so long. So they actually cannot physically pass set on the other side in the same manner that they pass set. Like if their right tackle pass it on the left tackle, it's like because your body develops these physiological adaptations to the position. So, for Wiley, again, like he has some flexibility. He's a good athlete, especially for an offensive lineman. Again, you see that athleticism and flexibility in practice. But, there is something different about moving from the right to left. And he's predominantly played on the right side, so I understand. Again, if you don't feel 100% comfortable with him playing on the left side, then go out and make this move, right? Carry an extra offensive lineman. So that's kind of my approach, my perspective on it. Because, again, like if he's not comfortable and you can't get through a game with him at left, you definitely need to get someone in here who can. And again, like it can be, for some people, a pretty stark difference.
Give me kind of your feel for Brandon Coleman. But listen, you're not going to be better when Laramie Tunsil goes down. That's an excellent football player at a premium position, as pretty much by you don't have to have a master's degree in football to figure out it's hard to replace that guy. Kind of give me your feel on Coleman, though. I think it sounded like he was making some good progress there at left guard, and now he's kind of back where it all began in 2024 at left tackle. Give me kind of a state of the state there.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Like, kind of in terms of difficulty, him moving around and kind of, I talked to Grant about this, like kind of having an inside track there, I think, for that left guard spot early this offseason, then to kind of be bumped back out to the left tackle position. I think he's handled it really, really well. Again, like, just watching the film of not watching the film of practice, but watching practice, watching the film from 2025, like there's just a much greater consistency, a much greater understanding of how NFL rushers are trying to beat you. And I think that's fantastic. And like you said, like you're never going to be able to fill the shoes completely of Laramie Tunsil, who is, a top 5 player at the position. But I do think like he's a more than serviceable backup. And, obviously like him moving around is difficult, but he seems to have handled it again through the joint practice, through the practices so far, very, very well. And so, again, like that's really encouraging for a young player to kind of be carving out this role and for the staff to be so confident in his ability by giving him this opportunity.
Logan Paulsen on Grant and Danny here on The Fan. So, Logan, when you were playing for the decade you're in the league, I know that as a player internally, you always feel like this team can make the playoffs or I can make this play because that's how you get to the top. But were there times as camp went on where it was clear that there was like a roster issue at a certain area? I'm wondering internally if they feel that at all. I know Adam Peters does, Dan Quinn does. They're going to overturn as many stones as possible. Like, can players sense that too? Or just how in the bubble?
Yeah, I think absolutely. I think sometimes it's hard when your face is 2 inches from the glass, but I think like that's why this joint practice is so important. That's like when I was able to feel some of the deficiencies the most acutely is when we go to joint practice with Houston, we go to joint practice with New England Patriots back in the day when we were practicing down in Richmond, and it's like, oh, actually that's what a really difficult defensive end should feel like when you block them, or that's how they rush the passer, or hey, this linebacker running through the A-gap, like that's problematic. Like that's what that position should feel like when they're blitzing on a running back. And so I think like, coming out of this practice, everyone's kind of like, oh my gosh, this is not good. But I actually think this is, again, like this is me glass half full 100%. But like this idea that now we can identify some of these issues with our roster, kind of identify things we can do well or we are doing well, things that we need to improve on. And people say, well, like that seems too little too late. Well, I still have 2 weeks to get that stuff corrected. So I'd much rather know now and kind of say, hey, man, we thought we had the personnel to run X type of play. Maybe we don't have that anymore. We got to kind of change our approach, change our philosophy here. And I think that's why this practice, as negative as it was, is so important to kind of making sure that they're ready for week 1.
One of the things that got me thinking about that, in a sense, was the response from some of the players to the joint practice. Because I saw the reports, and I trust implicitly what the beat reporters are seeing. But I was like, let me see how the vibes are for the team. And you see Jeremy Reeves really upset. I mean, he said something to the effect of, if we play like we just practiced, that's how you go to 5-12. I mean, he was really discouraged. Yeah. There were other guys that were frustrated. I think that's super healthy because it tells me that they know this momentum isn't good right now. Like, this isn't going well.
Oh, I think that's 100% right. Like, obviously, they could come out of that thing and be like, yeah, it wasn't our best day, and there's some things to work on. But I think that focus and that passion, that energy is exactly what I want to hear from a leader on your team. Like, Coleman had a similar kind of he echoed a similar concern coming out of the practice. And I think when you hear people saying, hey, we need to hold it, like, that's why this is so important, man. It's so, so important to have a practice like this, because it's like saying, hey, man, we thought we were in a good spot. We thought this coverage worked really well. And all of a sudden Baltimore comes in and it's like, man, we got to be more detailed. I got to be more locked in on my split. Hearing Coleman talk about some of the combination details, like when you play against good players, they expose weaknesses in your technique. And you're like, oh, I'm in a good spot. I can beat, so-and-so from the Washington Commanders every single day. I'm in a fantastic spot. That extra little bit of volume of intensity is the thing that is so valuable about that joint. So for them to come out of it saying with that realization, I think makes that 2-hour period worth like almost everything this season, because they still have 2 weeks to make corrections, 2 weeks to lock in on those techniques. And again, that kind of refocused energy is exactly what I want to hear from the leadership on this team.
Logan Paulsen with us here on G&D. So let's get to the nitty-gritty at the center spot. What did we see from Allegretti that made them so confident that he would be the guy? Now, obviously, the injury bug has bitten him pretty hard. He hasn't made it through 2 practices yet. And then some, Julian Good-Jones, backup at that spot, Coleman, et cetera. What have you seen from the center, and why does it feel like that's kind of the spot that's on fire right now?
Well, partially because it pseudo is, right? Like, obviously, you go into this offseason kind of saying, hey, like, we want Allegretti to play. He's nicked up. And again, like, when you go back and watch his games from last year, I think it was the Giants or the Cowboys game, he did some good things. Like, he can move pretty well for a guy his size. He understands the calls really well, and he has experience. And at that position, that's extremely important. And obviously, you go from a guy who's played a lot of football, started games in the NFL, to now, hey, we've got a guy who's only had a couple of snaps in his career in Good-Jones, who has done some good things. But again, speaking from experience, as a guy who's kind of a rotational roster guy, like, there is a difference between performing well in training camp, performing well in the preseason, and playing varsity football with some of the freaks out there in the NFL. And so obviously he's like, as a depth piece, I think you probably feel fine about Good-Jones. But now that he's the starter, it's like, man, this exposes a lot of risk for this offensive line and for this roster. And Goldman, I think, he's exceeded my expectations as a 6th-round pick. But the problem with that is, like, he's a rookie coming into a position that's incredibly cerebral. And he's going to see, and right now, in my opinion, defenses are more complicated than ever. And so, like, you're asking him to do things that are a very far cry from what he was doing in college. So that's why it feels that way, is because you've got you're injured, your starter's injured. You've got 2 backup pieces who I think are fine football players, but maybe not ready for the bright lights. And that's why it feels like that position specifically is so exposed at the moment.
Logan Paulsen on G&D here on The Fan. We've talked a lot about the center position and where it ranks on like a value chart with other offensive line positions. I just want to get your thoughts on this, because I know you're of the belief kind of it's lesser than tackle, and I think there was a time when guard was at the bottom of the totem pole. Seems like in league circles, guard has become more important than center, and you and I on Take Command have gone into why that is, right? But it feels like there's so much talk about Nick Allegretti and how valuable and important he is that both can't be true. And I want to know what you think about that. Like, could this be somewhat of an experiment that says the center position maybe is trending back in the right direction if this much goes away when a guy goes down? Or thinking about, like, the Linderbaum money, where that money wasn't available to a player at that position a couple of years ago. I don't know. What's your thought on that?
No, I think those are great points, man. And I think what you're feeling is, or what I'm feeling is, I still wouldn't overly value the center position. Like, I'm not sure I'm trying to make Tyler Linderbaum the highest paid center in the league, in league history. But again, like, there's I think there's 2 things that are happening here. One is that Linderbaum is a specific and special player that is unique at the position in terms of his athleticism, his physicality, and his intellect. Right? But he's the outlier. He's not the rule. And so when I look at, like, most teams and most centers, like, they are competent starting offensive linemen who traditionally cannot start at another position on the offensive line. They're too small to play guard. They're not long enough to play tackle, right? And so that's where I kind of say, like, you can get good value in terms of physicality at the center position from guys who maybe are too small to play tackle, too slow to play guard. Like, and so, again, that's where I kind of say, like, the value to me at the center, because of the athlete, is not as, like, premium. You can get by with it. Now, you need a serviceable starting caliber player there. And what that looks like is a little bit different for each team and each system. But I think that's where I'm getting, like, that's what I'm trying to get to here, or alluding to here, right? Is, like, there's exceptions in Tyler Linderbaum, but most of the teams have just an average kind of center player. Now, like, without that position, Allegretti, who I would assume is perfectly average, without that, you're below average at the position. And that's where you feel some of the weight of not having someone who could go out and potentially like start multiple games for you over the course of a year.
Here's an interesting question somebody sent in as a take command mailbag question while you're on the show. I might as well ask it to you as Logan Paulsen's joining us. I thought this was fun from Jeremy. He says, if the Eagles pick up Will Harris, how much could a coaching staff mine him for intel on the defensive scheme? Everyone keeps talking about how nobody knows what they're going to run and how they're going to run it. More generally, what is a player, coaching staff, team, organization, et cetera, etiquette for this type of thing? I've always said I would do this all the time.
That's what I would do. I'd major in it.
I would do it every single week as I'm playing someone, put a guy on my practice squad, especially with the expanded practice squad. But like right now, if the Eagles sign Will Harris, how much info does he have that would help them?
A ton, quite honestly. Like a good example of this is when I got cut in Atlanta, and then I went and played Houston. We played Atlanta later that year. Like I knew every single one of their 2-minute hand signals and calls. I knew all of their protection calls. I knew their gap scheme, outside zone, run game calls. I knew their cadence preferences in certain situations. And Houston ended up winning that game, right? But again, like I knew everything about the offense. So I had meetings with the defensive staff and just I brought my notebooks that I had in Atlanta from the installs and went through anything that they felt was relevant. And it was a lot. And so
Who
like
are you
for a
sitting
guy
down
like Harris,
with on that?
so everybody, you sit down with the DB's coach. The linebacker coach would have a question about, hey, with this formation, like, what are they trying to get out of it? And you go back, you look at your notes and be like, well, these are the couple plays they run, right? Defensively, like the D-line coach, like I remember I didn't really talk to J.J. Watt a whole bunch when I was in Houston, but he came up to me and he was like, hey, man, this is extremely helpful, talking about the cadence stuff that they do. And again, like, because he wanted to get sacks. So, like, I met with, like, players, coaches. I met with Billy O at the time, like in terms of talking about kind of just a general offensive philosophy, like because every bit of information there is relevant in terms of winning a football game.
And so you obviously can't take proprietary stuff with you, like stuff that belonged to the Atlanta Falcons. But as you said, you were so studious, your notes, those would be like in the study group in college. Those would be the notes we'd all go off of, right, for the test. I mean, that was kind of what you could take with you anywhere you go. And I'm sure that served you really well.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, like, I knew based on certain splits, like what kind of route combinations they would run, because like not only had I written down all the install notes, but I would also draw up the plays in my notebook. So I was able to take pretty much everything with me, and it was extremely helpful. The defensive guys were like, this is fantastic. Coach O'Brien called my agent and said this was the best amount of information we were able to glean from a player. So I don't know what kind of note taker Harris is, but I'm assuming it's pretty good because he's been around for a while. So I think, he could come in with a lot of information and really impact, how Philadelphia is preparing.
So, and Logan Paulsen with us here on G&D, it reminds you of the age-old debate at the end of a season. It's a good problem to have, right? When you've clinched the number 1 overall seed, you've got the bye. Do you rest your players and do you risk rust, or do you want to get them healthy? It's rest versus rust, right? Well, we hear a similar kind of debate when it comes to, dude, it's a new coordinator. Oh, it's the great unknown. It's the equalizer. No one knows what they're going to do. And then, the next week we'll have a conversation. Well, listen, it's a new coordinator. You got to give them some grace and a chance to get their feet wet. Underneath, you know what I mean? Like you could hear it in both directions. Where do you sort of fall on that kind of line of demarcation?
Like with regards to week 1, is that kind of what you're saying?
Well, but for week 1, but anything in general, like a new coordinator. Because Grant and I this week were talking about, hey, we should probably be a little bit more patient here with 2 new coordinators for a little while, as they'll probably be better in November than they are in September, versus it's a surprise attack. You should change coordinators every week because no one knows what you're running. Like, where do you fall on that scale?
No, I think you're exactly right. I think, obviously talking to Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay about their first early experiences with being coordinators, like it was surprising to hear some of the things that some of the problems that they had to troubleshoot in terms of installing an offense and creating a game plan and how to call plays in certain situations. And I think that is something that only can be learned with on-the-job training, quite honestly. And so, like I've had a couple of conversations with David Blau, and he's a really bright dude. Like he really reminds me, just in terms of the interaction, how he thinks about the game, a lot of like a young Sean McVay. But again, there's going to be bumps and bruises along the way. And, I haven't really talked to Durante Jones as much. I think he's a little bit different in my mind because he has called plays before. He understands some of the difficulties and limitations of putting things in and making sure guys have ownership of it and how offenses can attack. So I kind of think he's in a better position. So in terms of week one, like some of those like brand new coordinator things aren't going to be quite as relevant for him. And I think honestly, like it's going to really impact the game in a positive way for the Commanders because of his experience, even though it's limited. But I do think like with David Blau, he's got to go through a lot of like, how do you manage your staff? How do you communicate with players? Like it's just a lot of growing, and it's just more, and it's more than what you know as a football coach. It's how you interact with people. So yeah, I think you want to be patient with those guys. Let them grow. But again, like I'm sure everybody's talked about, this year you can't be patient because the schedule's so difficult so early on.
The Will Harris release, indicative of them feeling pretty good about their other safeties as well. Tyler Owens had the big physical play, blowing up a running back in pass pro in Detroit. Quan Martin's got 2 picks in 2 preseason games. He was singled out by Dan Quinn just this week as being maybe the most impressive guy in the second half of camp. I mean, what do you make of the safety position as it's coming together here?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. Like we've talked about that group quite a bit on Take Command, and I think I kind of knew in the back of my mind. There's nothing for certain with an NFL roster, but that like Tyler Owens and Percy Butler were going to make the squad because of their special teams value, and we were kind of pulling for Quan. Like he's an exceptional athlete, he's got exceptional football instincts, and I think his career has kind of been characterized by these big, beautiful, explosive, turnover-worthy plays that he's creating, big hits, but also characterized by some pretty terrible negative plays. And like, can he find some level of consistency in his play? And it seems like through the course of OTAs, minicamp, training camps, that he's found some of that consistency. And so again, when you get that kind of athlete and that kind of competitor locked in mentally, like, which is what it seems like at the moment, like I think you feel really, really confident about him. So, like to answer the original question, like he's had maybe, again, Dan Quinn alluded to this also, one of the best off seasons of anybody on the team. So I think he's well warranted of getting this opportunity. And it's unfortunate for Harris, but again, like you want young athletic players to kind of fill out the meat of your roster, and that's exactly what Quan is.
So Logan, I love Jaden Bradley. Okay, and this is not a great question. So bear with me.
Don't we all, though? You know what I mean?
Yes.
Don't we all? Come on.
I'm obsessed. I have a crush. If you're big and tall and can run and make one-handed catches and like let defenders know that you just caught it in their face, I got a soft spot. I'm weird about certain things. That's one of them. I really, really like him. So it's a stacked position all of a sudden, especially with Stephon Diggs there. So it's less about Jaden Bradley. I'd love you to talk about him. But for every preseason hero. And I'm not trying to be flippant because you're on with this, but you're a great example. For every preseason hero, there is a Logan Paulsen. There is a guy that defies the odds, turns himself into a really good, valuable NFL player who takes great notes. You know what I mean? Like there are guys that are the success stories that you don't count on right away. And it's always so hard to tell what's a mirage and what's real. And I guess kind of just want your general thoughts both on Bradley and that big picture thing of a guy not only cracking the roster, but making it and making a career.
Yeah, I mean, it's extremely difficult, and I think there's probably no better example of a guy than like Jeremy Reeves, right? Like his trajectory has been pretty fantastic, like up and down off a practice squad in Philly, gets signed here, kind of finds a role as a special teams player. And really, it's just about showing that you have value on Sundays. I was very fortunate to come to the team and kind of say like, oh, I had value as a blocker in short yardage goal line situations. So that was how it was contributing. And then that kept me around for like a year and a half, and my role slowly expanded. So it's really just about getting that first foot in the door, right? So for Bradley, to me, it's like, can you cover a kick? Can you be a gunner? Because like while you are a very talented receiver, like they're not going to put you on the 53 if they don't feel like you can impact the game on Sundays. And I think that's the thing that most young players that I talk to have a really hard time understanding is it's not, I'm balling out at training camp, I'm doing all these different things. It's like, yeah, that's 100% true. And like, yeah, you've had a great camp, but like, where do you fit in on this team? And your role is going to be drastically different, on Sundays than it is in the week, right? Like, because you're going to be like, I think Nick Ballore is a great example. Like Nick Ballore played for forever on teams. Like you don't think he wanted to play linebacker? You 100% wanted to play linebacker. You don't think Logan Paulsen wanted to catch passes? I 100% wanted to catch passes. But like, you just got to kind of say, where am I best value adding to this team? And like, pour yourself into that. So with Bradley, just as an example, like, yes, he's dynamic. He catches the football well, but there's a bunch of other guys above him that make more money that have done it at a high level for a long time. So now it's like, hey man, where else can I contribute? Maybe it's as a blocker. Maybe it's as a gunner. Maybe it's as a R5 on kickoff coverage, right? Like those are the things that you got to keep an eye out, especially in this third preseason game for a guy like that. Cause like if he comes out and plays well in teams, he's got a shot.
Logan, I'll never win an Edward R. Murrow Award if I don't ask questions like the one I'm about to ask. Did the Texans beat the Falcons after all that help he provided?
They did beat the Falcons, yeah.
They did.
They did beat the Falcons, yeah.
What was the score? Like,
at the
dominate or close, or like was it?
Was it like a Tampa Gruden thing?
Did you get a game ball afterwards from Bill O'Brien after the game?
It was something crazy. It was like 55-30. It was like a college score, if I remember correctly. And I wish I could say I had all this impact, but I did have some guys on the sideline, like some of the DBs come up to me because there was a big, long stretch where they were in a 2-minute situation. They were like, man, you were 100% right. That's exactly what they were doing. And I was like, yeah, like they're not going to change their calls like just because they're playing Houston. You know what I mean? So that did feel good. Felt a little weird talking to the coaches about it afterwards, like for Atlanta. But, they let me go, so I had to make some business decisions.
Yeah, they did what they did. You had to do what you did. Logan, always fun, man. Thanks, buddy.
You're the best, bud.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate you.
He's a good egg. He's Logan Paulsen. Appreciate him hopping on with us. Take Command is a podcast that I do with him that you can listen to 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. All things Commanders, available wherever you get your audio. We should remind